Her and EU, a European podcast on gender equality. Brought to you by the Martens Centre with Loredana Teodorescu.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this new episode of Her and EU, a podcast on gender equality and women's role in the society. I'm Loredana Teodorescu, and our special guest of today is Stefano Sannino, Secretary General of the European External Action Service. Mr. Sannino, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. So I would like to start with a personal question. You are part of a bigger effort within the European Union institutions and also the European External Action Service to promote the presence of more women in both leading and senior positions. And this is something that you are also actively encouraging. So was this aspect, the participation and leadership of women, always an important issue for you? Or was there something like, I don't know, a specific episode that raised your awareness and your engagement on the topic?
I think it has always been part of my culture. I mean, I don't want now to say that I've been always absolutely aware of the need and the problems of the gender parity, gender equality. But it is true that I think that from a certain point of view, I've never had any kind of bias on this issue. And so for me, it has been quite natural coming to a position of responsibility, of management, of structures to include this dimension. And in a way, I have to say that it's something in which I believe very much, not to have it, the gender dimension as an afterthought. So it's something that should come naturally. Now, I understand that maybe for a number of other persons, for different culture or from a different background, this can be a little bit more complicated, but let's say in a way I've been, let's say, I don't know if born, but I've been certainly raised with this dimension very much present in my life. So I've been always surrounded by a very by an environment where women were many and very important. So it has come quite naturally. But I have to say that I'm very grateful to now in my present position to Stella Rohner, our ambassador for gender and diversity, because she has helped me to structure maybe a little bit more and to help me structuring the work on this within the organization.
And how this sensitiveness, how this engagement is translated into your current work? I mean, for instance, within your institution, how are you trying to promote the participation of more women? What are the challenges that you are still facing, and what are the main achievements so far?
The perspective from which we had started was the more the external dimension, so the women, peace and security agenda, which was, let's say, very much part of the work that we are doing, also in promoting with third countries this agenda. Then there was, let's say, in the house, more linked to the resource management department, person that was working more on the issue of how to support gender equality, to improve the presence of women in senior management position, and so on. And then still, I think at a very good point in saying we cannot be credible outside if we are not credible inside. And if we are not managing to link these two dimensions and to have a capacity to work internally, externally with the same credibility and the same strength. And that's what we did. So we merged essentially the teams under her responsibility, and let's say she's reporting directly to me. And we have been working on the two sides, the internal and external. Now, internally, there are, especially in a structure which is complex like the one of the External Action Service, because there is a civilian component, but there is also a military component, there are a lot of challenges. The first of all is creating an environment which is more conducive to gender equality, which means that what we call gender responsive leadership. So the idea, as I was saying before, that gender is not an afterthought, but something that comes naturally with when you are developing and shaping up policies, including personnel policies. And from there, which are the kind of initiatives that could be taken in order to ensure gender equality in the system. First of all, you need to force the system. That's, I think, it's something that we need to be aware of. Unfortunately, it doesn't come natural. And naturally, you get more or less to 1/3. But if you're not forcing the system, you cannot manage to go up, which does not mean that you have to, let's say, only promote women against men. I think that we not need to make a sort of battle of sexes from that point of view, but thinking that and trying to spot, let's say, talents in the house, and being able to, I would say, to create the conditions for these talents to express themselves and to come to the fore as men do. Then the second point is to help in creating the, let's say, the conditions for this to happen, and how to reconcile private and life and work life. And it's also another important element, how to work together with others in order to create this condition. Then the other important point is how to help women to develop these skills. And so how to give them management experience that can help them to grow in their position. And there, once again, you have to force the system. Then you need to, for example, we have created the position of deputies to the director, which is, let's say, a purely administrative position, does not give you any particular advantage economically, but allows this person to have manager experience, senior management experience. And we have tried to essentially to give this opportunity only to women. That's a way of, let's say, trying to rebalance the situation internally. It is true that there is a social element that is also very important, where women need to feel that they can take up responsibilities and that cannot be just be seen and perceived as in ancillary roles, if I can say so. And that's something that it's not an effort that we can do alone. It's a societal effort. And there again, we need to be able to, since I would say school, give girls the sense that the world belongs to them as well, not belongs only to men.
Of course. So thank you for highlighting how important it is to combine the external and the internal dimension. I think that this is essential, and as you said, is really an issue of coherence and credibility in the end. But let's look also at the external dimension. You were mentioning the peace and security agenda. And some days ago, the Council of the European Union reaffirmed the importance of advancing the Women, Peace and Security agenda, which remains at the heart of the European Union. So I'm wondering, how are you trying to translate the commitment into concrete actions? Do you have specific objectives or concrete initiatives that you are developing to this aim?
First of all, there are some sectors where women have had traditionally a role less relevant. I mean, I was speaking before about the military dimension, and that's for us, it's a huge challenge. And we have a number of missions and operations, 18 missions and operations around the world. And this is still unfortunately a world which is still very male dominated, especially in the top positions and senior management positions. So it's to open a window in this area. It's certainly very important, and where a lot of works need to be done. To include, for example, and that's one of the things that we're doing, an environment which is conducive to including women in our missions operation. All the work that we are doing, for example, in the fight against harassment, not only sexual harassment, but also the psychological harassment. So how to we can try to facilitate women to move to these missions, bringing also with them the family with them. So there is a number of implications that needs to be taken into account. We are working a lot also on the creation of a roster of mediators. And then again, we are trying to include more women. And then, as I was saying, and I insist very much on this point, the idea of having a gender responsive leadership that again is considering this element as an essential element of the work that we are doing.
Maybe just a follow-up question on this. So according to your experience, how having more women shaping our foreign and security policies could make the difference? I mean, what's the added value of a female leadership?
I know that it's very much used at this point, but it is true that women are bringing into the table a sensitivity which is different from the one of men. If I may, I mean, and that's why I'm trying to develop at the same time also an agenda on diversity, because I think that we need to take into account and to bring in the experiences of different cultures, of different points of view, of different backgrounds. This is bringing to the table a much more richness and also a capacity to look at things maybe from different perspectives, and hence being able to look at solutions.
Indeed, I think that now there is probably a new or more awareness on the fact that in order to face current challenges, we also need to think differently and to promote creative solutions and going beyond business as usual. And of course, including more women is part of that. And maybe a last point that we didn't touch upon, which is mainstreaming. I mean, promoting gender equality is also integrating a gender perspective in our policies and external action. And how are you doing that, especially looking at the current big challenges such as climate change or human mobility, for instance?
The real effort is to change the mentality. That's why I'm saying that we can do one part of the work, but it must be a societal effort, because otherwise we will always come up with our stereotypes, with our mentality, and it is much more difficult to do this. We are working a lot, for example, with a number of foundations in order to create and support what I was saying, the gender responsive leadership within the External Action Service. We are trying, for example, to include also the gender dimension. We have the mission letters to all our ambassadors in the world, so that they, you can do a number of things that are trying to lay the foundations to do this. But I insist on the point of the mentality, because only if you manage to change the mentality, then you can produce a real change in the structures. Otherwise, it will be always a sort of the last moment thing. Is I had forgotten to take into account the gender element. And it's very banal. I mean, once you have it, you spot immediately the problems. But for example, the idea of not having panels without women on the panel. And this is something that if you are, again, let's say, if it comes naturally, you are naturally, when you are thinking about possible panelists, you think also to women panelists. And the same story goes when you are, I don't know, interviews for the appointment of ambassadors. There too, I mean, when you establish the list of people that have to be interviewed, then you realize that that sometimes there is no woman that has been pre-selected for this, and that's the thing that we need to avoid. Then, unfortunately, there are moments when there are no women that are presenting their candidature for certain positions. And this is, I think, a failure of the system as a whole, because it means that we have not managed to go and spot the necessary talent to do this work. And that's, I think it's the next step that we need to go through, going and trying to find the talents when they are and bringing them in.
Thank you. And of course, I agree with you. Everything goes back to culture, to mindset, to mentality. Before concluding, one last personal question, which is something that I always ask my guests, because I truly believe in mentoring and in people supporting each other. So was there a person who inspired you throughout your life, or that you consider to be a mentor?
There is yes, I mean, I don't know if a mentor, but certainly a source of inspiration. When I was posted in Belgrade back in 1993, it was a very difficult period, sanctions, isolation, and all the rest. There was a fantastic person who was in charge of the Open Society Foundation in Belgrade. And she managed to finance essentially all the opposition structures, from NGOs to independent media to hospitals. And it's a fantastic person, Sonia Lik. I think that she was extremely inspiring because she had a very clear vision of what she wanted to achieve, but also the, I would say, the capacity to be extremely inclusive in the way she was approaching, in this case, this difficult period, in this difficult situation that there was in Serbia and Belgrade at the time, without being judgmental, but at the same time still remaining very true to her convictions and her ideals. And maybe she has been a source of inspiration professionally, but also a person that has marked my idea of how you could intervene. I don't know if I can call it mediation, but you could contribute to a positive and constructive solution in a difficult moment. I would say it's very telling of what you were saying before, what a woman can bring to a difficult situation, the kind of sensitivity that can introduce, and that I have to say, I don't think that many other men would have had. She has done a fantastic work, and she has paid an enormous service to her country.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Sannino, once again for your time and for this open conversation. And thank you to the Martens Center for making this podcast possible. And thank you all for listening. We will be back soon with a new episode, so stay tuned.
Thank you.
That was today's episode of Her and EU. Subscribe to our podcast for more.